This is Lab 2 data entry. In this exercise, we'll learn how to import data into a shapefile and use it to make a map. So with that, we'll learn how to import XY data, add fields to an attributes table, edit an attributes table, join a data table to an attributes table, select a field for display in an attributes table, add data to a finished map, and export an attributes table. The products you'll turn into me are an attributes table in the format of a DBF and a map in the format of a PDF. So for this project, we're going to have to adjust some of our Excel file sheets. Arc has a problem talking to Windows 365. So all the file types that we have here are these Microsoft Excel worksheet file types. And for whatever reason, there's something goofy going on where Arc doesn't want to recognize these. So there's a workaround where you can install a driver set for an older version of Microsoft, and I will provide a link for that in our handouts. But there's also this quick workaround. Let's do that for this set because it's a pretty simple thing to do. So you'll want to open up this full set Microsoft Excel worksheet here. It's going to open up in Excel. Yours might say at the top here have a yellow bar. You need to click enable editing. If it doesn't have that, you can just continue on to this next step. You want to go to file and you want to go to save as. In here you want to choose the drop down and you want to choose this comma delineated CSV file. You click that and you click save and say okay. Now you'll go through it and you'll do that for each one of these Excel files. I'm just going to show you once more with this one. Open it up. We go up here, we click File, we click Save As, we choose the comma delineated CSV file, and we say Save. We say OK. All right, so go through, do that for all of your Excel files. The next step we want to do is you want to open up Arc. Navigate to where you have your extracted Lab 2 data entry folder and choose this Lab 2 data entry MXD file. Click on that, click open. It's going to open up your file here. Now, what you'll notice here is that you have this public bare earth hill slope file here. And it's got a red exclamation point next to it. Anytime you have a red exclamation point next to a layer, it means that something is broken in that layer. So the path to this file is broken, so it's looking for it, it's not finding it. So we can just leave it alone right now. We're just not going to end up using this in this project. We'll show you how to get a different hill shade in for this project. So the next thing you want to do is we're going to import that XY data. So we want to go up to File and we want to add data and we want to add XY data. And then in here we want to go to where we saved that folder. So this is our Lab 2 data entry folder, right? And we want to click the ID and coordinate CSV file. That's the one that we just created. We click add. All right. Now remember how I said we want to use the UTM East and UTM North, not the longitude latitude files here. So we'll go here and we'll choose UTM East for our XY field, because if you think about East West is running along the X axis on an XY, and then we'll choose UTM North for our y-axis field. All right. Now down here, this is not the coordinate system that we want to use. So we want to go down here and we want to click edit. All right. And then we want to go to our projected coordinate system. So you can double click on that and then scroll down to where it says UTM, double click on that. And we want to choose NAD 83. And then we want to scroll down here to NAD 83 UTM zone 10 north. You remember when that first video when I was talking about how the UTM zones work? 10 north is the zone that encompasses Oregon. So we'll click on that and we'll say okay. And then that brings in that tells us the projection for this coordinate system that we brought in. Now we click OK here. And we want to say, all right. And there we go. And you'll see that these points now have been added to our map. The final step for this is to make these points a permanent feature, because currently right now they are only a temporary feature. They're called an event in their layers up here. So what you want to do is you want to go up here, you right click on them, you go down to data, you go down to export data, and we want to go to the browse button here. We're going to put this into the same folder that we had before, that we were in our lab 2 folder, data entry, and we want to name this STW surveys. And it's automatically a shapefile, and it defaults to that, so let's just keep it like that. And then we say okay, and we say yes. And once we've done that, we can right click up here and we can just remove the temporary events file. So your points are still here. And you may be asking yourself, what does STW mean? That is Steelhead Winter Surveys. So these are some surveys that I conduct on an annual basis near Coos Bay. So this next step, we're going to add a column to our attributes table. So by attributes table, I'll show you what I mean here. You go over here and you right click and you go down to open attributes table. Now what this is if you remember when we were looking at the Excel file, we had a whole bunch of points, right? And then we had our UTMs, our coordinates for those points. So this is your attributes table. Attributes tables could be quite long, because for each one of these points, or each feature, say if you're drawing polygons or you have lines like your streamlines, each feature is going to have its unique identifier here, and then it's also going to have any of the information that goes with it. So what we want to do is we want to add in a field that is called reach. So what we're going to do is we're going to go up and we're going to go to the drop down that's in the top right of the attribute screen. So right here, right? And we want to go down here and we want to go to add field. So this field that we're going to add, we're going to call it reach. And we're going to make it a text field. And the length of 50 characters is fine. We can leave that alone. And then we'll say okay. Now you see here, it created a file over here called reach. All right. So now over here in our main map, I've already added this here. But if you right click, if you don't have a check mark next to editor, click that check mark there and it will open up this tool set up in your toolbar. You want to go to editor. I'm going to edit, start editing. Okay. Basically what that allows you to do is it allows you to edit the features that are on this map. It also allows you to change things in your attributes table. So we say continue. All right. So now if we go back and we open up the folder where we downloaded everything, we can go and we can open up an Excel file. Go over here. We can open up our folder here, and we can open up the ID and reach folder. Okay. You can see here we have a column that is called reach. Now, ideally, you do this with 2 monitors, but you can kind of pull it off without that. So we scrunch this over a little bit so we can still see everything. And we open up our map. And then we open our Excel file back up here. You can see here that this order of numbers is the same as this order of numbers. Now, if it wasn't, what you can do is you could click here and you can go to data and you can, here, it's a little easier. I'm going to make this big again. but you can go here and you can sort A to Z, right? And that will sort it from smallest of this numbers to the biggest of the numbers, right? And then you can do the same thing in here for your reach ID. If you right click up on the top here, you can have sort ascending. It's already doing that, so we're good to go on that. So if we go back to our Excel file, we go over to this column that says reach. We want to highlight everything. We right click on it. We say copy. And then over in here, we right click and we say paste. And there you go. Now you have these 2 blank points down here at the bottom. Those are a holdover from when you inserted the data. At this point in time, if you wanted, you can actually, if you push Control and click the other one, you can select both of those. Then you right click and you can delete selected. And we can just delete those points out of there. All right. And then we go up here to editor. We say stop editing. And asks you want to save the edits, and you say yes. And there you go. Now you've added this field. So now if we go in here and say we have this point here, we can go up to this identify tool, the one with the eye on it. We can go back over here and we can click that point, and it will tell us all the information for that point, and it also tells us that the reach ID for that point is Otter Creek. Okay? So same thing here. If we go over here to the one that says Otter Creek and we click here, you can see that that highlighted, that selected that point. Okay? So let's clear our selection. You can clear the selection either out here in the map with a little clear selection button, or in here in the attributes table with clear section button. And then we can go on to the next step. All right, so for this next step, I'm going to show you how you make a join. Now, a join is very similar to what we just did, but we're going to automate parts of it, all right? So if you're doing something simple like this is pretty easy. But say you have something that has hundreds of points in it, and you might not have your field over here might not be all in order or something along those lines. Or maybe you have duplicates over here that go with an ID number over here. So to do a join, what you do is we have a similar Excel file. So we're going to open up that file again. And we're going to go to ID and survey type. And we'll open that up just so you can get a look at it, just to see what it looks like. So right here we have a column here. It's got ID number. And then it's got whether or not it was a Steelhead Winter survey or not for that year. So just a yes or no column over here. Once again, very simple. We could just do a copy and paste like we did before. But we're showing you a different way of doing a join here. So let's close out of this. We don't need this to be open, okay? And now we can go back into here. And we can go and we want to right click over here. And we can go down to joins and related. And then we want to say join, okay? And then from here, we want to go and we want to choose join from a table, and then we want to choose the table we're going to use. So we're going to use our ID number is the field we want to use, right? But then we want to choose our table here, and we're going to use the ID and survey type .csv. So we say add. All right. And then in this one, since we already set it up already, the field in there is already called ID number, right? And say we can say keep all records, or we can keep only matching records. So we're going to keep all records for right now. And we say OK. And you see what happens here is we have some columns that get added, including all the way over here. We have this field over here that just has yeses and nos in it, right? And so basically what we did is we matched up those ID numbers, and it brought in this text column with STW survey as our header column, and the yeses and nos as the joins. Now this is also temporary. So the way this is set up is this is just a join. So if we want to get rid of that join, we can right click over here again. We can go to joins and related, and we can go to remove joins. And that will remove, if we click on this, it will remove that join. But we don't need to right now. We're going to leave that be. All right. So that's the other way that you can add in data. All right, so we're done adding in all of our information. So now what we want to do is we want to create a map from this information. So we're going to go over here. We're going to go to our layout view, right? That brings up our layout view. You'll notice that I have already made us a locator map, and it's got the little red square in there. It's in the right place, and I've already actually got us zoomed in roughly where we want to be. We could zoom in a little bit more if we wanted, but this is kind of nice because it matches the square of what our layout map shows here, right? I've already added in a neat line, so there's a few things here that are already done. So the first thing we want to do is let's insert a title. So if we go up to here to insert, we say title, right? Apparently I've already added in a title. This is what our title says. We can say cancel. Let's just retype this, right? So we have winter steelhead surveys in the lower Coos River Basin. All right, and with it as Arial 32 font, let's go to the change symbol. Let's maybe make that bold. We'll leave it Arial. Once again, text style is up to you, and you can just don't go completely crazy on stuff. Typically, once again, you want your maps to look professional, but sometimes a little bit of crazy font might fit what you're trying to do. But we'll keep it Arial for right now. So let's see how that looks, and we say apply. So we're a little too big here, right? So let's go in and say winter steelhead surveys, and we'll say enter, and then we'll say we'll say enter, lower Coos River Basin, and we'll center everything. Let's see how that looks. That looks all right, okay? So we say okay. We don't want it overlapping the map, so let's pull it up. Let's see how that looks. Pretty decent, right? So that looks good. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is let's insert a north arrow. So we go to insert once again. We say north arrow. Once again, flashy or not, it's up to you. Maps like this is a pretty simple map. I tend to keep my north arrows pretty simple as well. So I like that one. Let's just go with that one. You can choose something a little different. Doesn't really matter. Just, like I said, you want to keep stuff appropriate. So we can put that here. We know that we're going to have a scale bar in. Typically, I want my scale bar closer to my map. That's, it's a preference thing. You could have your scale bar down here on the bottom, but you're going to be using your scale bar to look at the scale of the map. Your north arrow might not necessarily need to be right up next to your map. You also have a little bit of blank spot over here where you don't have any rivers, you don't have any points in there. You could put your north arrow in there, see how it looks. Don't really like it there. But that being said, right up here, doesn't look too bad, right? And that's going to be a blank area here because remember this dotted line's not going to show up, right? So that might be a blank area, and it fills in some space there to have a north arrow there. So let's leave it there for right now. All right, so let's insert our scale bar. We want to say scale bar. We have it in, looks like feet, but we're going to check. Go to properties. It says it's in miles. Miles is good. Some of these surveys, depending on what we were doing, we might want to do them in kilometers, depending on what the project calls for. For this is just a general information map. Let's leave it in miles. I'm going to say okay. And we say okay. All right. We'll pull that down there. And this is a nice division. So we have 8 total miles. If you wanted, you can maybe stretch this out a little bit and go to, say, 10 miles. But when you do 10 miles and it's breaking it in sections of 4 like this, so you have like 7.5, 1.25. So if we go back into here and we go to properties, we can do number of divisions. So we have 10, so we know it divides by 5 pretty easily, right? So we could say 5, and number of subdivisions, let's make that 2. Let's see what that looks like, right? So that gives us 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. That's not bad. We like that, right? So we'll mess around with that function a little bit more later on as well. All right. So let's add in a text box. It's right there. We'll click off of it. We'll click it. We'll bring it down here. I just like doing that so that when you double click on it, you're not accidentally double clicking into the map somewhere and doing something different. We bring it down here. It's obviously what we're in. We double click here, and we're going to add in our source. So we have the Oregon Geospatial Clearinghouse. That's where we got these base maps and the stream layer. Okay. And that I will show you a little bit later too. It's a really good place to go and download information. I'm going to push enter. We have Oregon Department Fish and Wildlife. We say we want it to be the left-hand line. We say okay. That puts it there. Click off here, insert text, double click on it here. I put your name, and the date. I want to make it right-hand aligned because it's going to go over here in this corner. Let me say okay. Then we can bring it up here, put it in this corner. Now to make everything line up nice and neat, we have these layout tools up here. If you right click, you can see it says layout. That's one of the ones that's selected. This is one of the tools I really like. If you click on this text box, push control, click on that text box, and then we can align them on the bottom. We get a little tiny micro adjustment there. Now they're lined up perfectly across the bottom, which is nice. All right, so finally what we want to do is add in a legend. So we go up here, we say insert, and we say legend. And so we don't want to add in all of these things. We could have streams in there, but streams are pretty obvious in this map. That's what we're showing. It's a very simple map, so I don't think we need to call out streams. And the rest of the stuff isn't as useful either. All we're really worried about is designated what these two different colored points are. So if we go here, we click shift, we can select all of these, and then those will remove them for the list. So then all we have here is our STW surveys. Click next. We don't need a legend title. Delete that. Click next. We want to put a border around it. This is one of those things that you do want to put a border around. Just makes your legends look a little bit nicer. Since we have all this white space right here, we're not going to have to incorporate our legend somewhere overlapping the map. We really don't need to worry about a background right now. We'll just leave the background hollow. Click next, and click finish. So it just dropped it in here on top of everything. Let's just pull it over to the side so we can see everything. So you get a whole bunch of information here that you don't really need. We do have survey types, and then we have the two types right here that we want. But right now, this is a feature of this map. And if I was to go over here and say, let me click off of here. Say if I go to Coho here, and I change this to blue for right now, we say okay. You can see it updates it in the legend. We're going to change that back to green. Keep it 14, change it back to green. Say okay, and updates it in the legend there. to be able to mess around with this legend, we want to change it so that this is no longer linked to that part over there. So what we can do is we can click on it, we right click, and we can say convert to graphics. Once we've converted it to graphics, it just becomes text and shapes at this point in time. So now if we were to update this over here, say we change this back to blue, say okay, it doesn't do anything to this. This is no longer linked to what's going on over here. So sometimes this is really nice to have this linked to over here. Sometimes you need to you need to get into here and you need to manipulate some things. So being able to change it, having it change to graphics is handy. So let's go over here. We'll change this back to green so it looks right. And say okay. All right. So this is now graphics. Now, when you click on it, you see it just grabs this whole thing, and this whole thing's all grouped together. So what we want to do is we want to right click and we want to go to ungroup. And when you do that, you can see that each one of these then became its own separate little thing. Now, if you were to click on, so let's zoom in here a little bit. So you click on this coho box here. These two are now grouped together. So if you wanted to change that, change this text so it didn't say coho, you wanted to change it to something else, or adjust what this point looked like, you would ungroup this group. But we're not doing that right now, so we don't need to mess around with that. But what we are doing is we're going to clean this up a little bit. So we don't need, let's undo that. We just shifted that box a little bit. We don't need this in there, so we can delete it. And we don't have any other values, so we can delete that. And then our box is too big with those missing, so let's pull this down and go like so. All right, so there we go. There's our legend. It's a little bit nicer. It's a little bit cleaner. But if we wanted to be able to move it again, everything's its own piece, right? So that just moves away like that. It makes it really annoying to try to move everything. We're going to click back, so it moves it back to where it was. So what we want to do then is we want to drag our box around it so it selects everything. Right click again and say group. Now when we grab it, everything moves together. If we needed to edit some things in there, change some things in there again, we just say ungroup. All right, so let's zoom back out. And let's bring this over here. So we have a few options here. We can put it in the middle like this because there's some blank spot there, or we can put it over here. I'm personally leaning towards putting it over on this side. What I'd probably do is if I was making this a map that I was going to professionally give out, I might change this in here. I might put like a little text blurb in here that talked about, how the surveys were conducted, what years these were conducted, something along those lines. Just to fill up this space. You wouldn't want to just fill it up just for the sake of filling it up, but if you had some useful information you could put in there, you could do that. The other thing we want to do is just like we had the text boxes here, let's do a little bit of adjustment as well. So let's take this text box and we'll click over here and then let's adjust a little bit. And you'll notice the first thing you click on adjusts to the second thing you click on. Now the bottom of these two are lined up. All right, makes it look a little cleaner, a little bit nicer, and that's what this step is all about. Okay, and then finally, what we want to look at, and let's zoom in a little bit here, is we have our map in the middle. It looks pretty lined up, but let's make sure, right? So let's click on the map. We'll push control. We'll click on the title, and we'll push control, and we'll click on the edge of the paper. All right, so like I said, the last thing you click on is what everything adjusts to. So then we can go here, and we can say center. Nothing really moved, maybe a tiny bit, but what we just did is we just centered our map in here, our title, and everything to the outside of the paper. You might wonder why I didn't do that with the title or with the scale bar, and the reason by that is that because scale bars kind of have this weird empty space on the side, so if you center them, it pulls them around weird. So they're a little bit better if you can just kind of eyeball where the center of the page is and center of your scale bar. All right, so that is our map. There's our final map. What I want you to do is you'll want to save this map now. So, and you should be doing this as you go along. You would save it as your MXD file. So you can click the save button up there. And then also, what I want you to do is the thing that you're going to turn into me is a PDF of this map. So we go up here and we say File. We go Export Map. You'll want to change it. You see, I have Lab 2 data entry finished here. You'll want to put it as a Lab 2 data entry underscore with your last name. And then click Save. It will export it as a PDF, and I've already done that. Mine's already saved out here. And then finally, what I want you to do is I want you to go into your attributes table here. So right click over here and go open attributes table. And I want you to click on this, go down to export, and click on the folder here. And what this is going to do is it's going to export a spreadsheet of what your attributes table was, and you'll export it as a DBF file. A DBF file is just a form of a spreadsheet. I can open this up in Excel. I can make sure that you did everything right when you were doing your joins and your copy and paste and your import. So once again, change the name of this to lab2 data entry underscore your last name, and save it as a DBF. The two things you're going to be turning in is this DBF and the PDF of your final map. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email and we'll get everything figured out. And this is what your final map should look like.